They're the reason why, even if I didn't believe what I believed, I'd have to believe what I believe. Because they're all strong, strong, strong supporters of Ireland and peace and security in Europe. Folks, one of the people here today who does not hold an office now came in his mother's womb when John Kennedy was speaking here. John Kennedy's wife could not make the trip, Mrs. Kennedy, and so he did what I would do. He invited his sister to accompany him, as my sister is with me. And his sister was an incredible woman, but so was the young man that she bore. Mark Shriver, where are you, Mark? I want you to stand up and stay there. And Mark, when President Kennedy addressed the dial, I don't know whether Mark remembers the speech or not, but if he does, I'm really worried. I mention this because if it weren't for his father, Sergeant Shriver, I would not be standing here. In 1972, I was a young man, not old enough to be sworn in as a senator, running for the Senate, making me the second youngest man ever elected to the Senate. And his dad was finishing up the campaign, he was vice presidential candidate. And he was finishing up the campaign, he was all the way up in Massachusetts, and I asked whether he could come to a major event we had. We close out every election in my little state of Delaware. It's the single biggest event. And he came. He came. And he lied like hell about me. He said wonderful things about me and what future I would be part of. And I won by an overwhelming margin of 3,200 votes statewide. But I just want to acknowledge that, and I want to thank his father, who was a wonderful man who's passed away. But anyway, Mark, as my dad would say, you got good blood, kid. You've got good blood. And growing up, we called him Grandpa, my Grandpa Finnegan used to say, if you're lucky enough to be Irish, you're lucky enough. That was his expression. Surrounded by all of you in this homeland of my great-great-grandmother and grandfather, I feel very lucky, and I really do. You know, Taoiseach, I want to thank you for the 100,000 welcomes you give me, and I want to get one of your predecessors in real trouble. The predecessor was, when I was vice president, there was a guy who was a Taoiseach who was over 2 tables over there, Andrew Kenny, and we had I would have a breakfast as vice president, I'd have a breakfast every St. Patrick's Day for those who were the leading Irishmen in the United States Congress, as well as a couple of the prelates who were around, who were big supporters, and the Taoiseach. And Enda came over. We did that 8 times, I think, while I was there. The 6th time that I had him over, and then I'd walk him over to the White House to meet with the president. And we'd sit with the president. And so I'm sitting where the vice president sits, and the president is where he sits, Obama. And Enda looks at the president and says, for God's sake, Barack, let the boy go home. You keep sending him to Iraq and Afghanistan. No, let him go home. And Barack turned around and said, well, go the hell home. Go home. Well, anyway, I want to thank you, pal. Thank you for doing that. And I appreciate it. That was my first legal way to actually come as a sitting vice president. And I want to thank the Lord Mayor Caroline Conroy tonight, and I bring 100,000 welcomes. I'm not going to attempt to say it in Gaelic, from every corner of the United States, because every corner of the United States is loaded with Irishmen who would be delighted to be here. Proud Americans who also count themselves as sons of yours, daughters of yours, cousins, brothers, sisters, grandparents, parents. They really take great pride in their association with Ireland. And quite a few who wish they were lucky enough to be Irish as well. And the fact is that I also want to thank Marie Haney for being here tonight and attending this evening as well. but it's special to have her with me tonight. We're right, Marie. Thank you. One of my great regrets, your husband was making a presentation at one of the universities here, and I was asked to come and introduce him, and I couldn't because we were voting, and I really regret that. I really regret that. But I've had a lifelong love for Irish poets, and words made famous by Yeats, like, "In dreams began responsibility." We have a lot of dreams. We have a lot of dreams. I've never been doing this a long time. I've never been more optimistic about the future of both our countries than I am today. I mean it. Never in my entire life have I been more optimistic. And you know, as your husband would have said, believe that further shore is reachable from here. I believe the further shore is reachable from here. I honest to God do. I've been doing this a long time. Our words have the power to make history, Bolin said. Well, so many more who, if you think about it, every time I think of trying to define, people sometimes ask me, what's so special? No, I'm not being facetious. Why, what's so different about the Irish? And we're like every other human being in the world. We have our faults, all of us, whether it's in America or here. But you know, there is this sense. There's this sense that there's nothing ultimately we can't overcome. We've been through the troubles. We've been through the troubles personally and in terms of politically. But there is a sense that if you just stay at it, we can get it done. There's nothing that can ultimately defeat us. You know, but one poem I found a few years ago while going through the old boxes of our mom passed away. I didn't have the heart to. The last several years, thank God, was able to live with me. And all of my siblings got together and we built a place just outside the house. And my mom, it was part of the house, but my mom didn't want to live in the house because we always had a relative living in the house, our small house. And she said, I'm never going to be a burden. She was no burden. She was a blessing. But the point is that, the fact was that going through the old boxes, that I found 114 poems written by my our great-grandfather, Edward Blewett Finnegan. And he came here with his parents back at the time of the famine. And he became a well-educated man. He got a degree from Lafayette College, and he had 4 sons. They all got degrees there as well. And he became a mining engineer. And raised in Scranton, but heart that he had was molded by his father and his grandfather. And those poems he wrote were almost all of them about his Ireland. And in 1925, he died shortly after that. In 1925, one of the later poems he wrote was called The Workers. He said, no barrier is too thick or strong to stay their onward march each day. The goal they seek, the goal they find, hardship to them is but real play. You know, for countries like ours, and our people have always marched forward, toward better futures, one of greater liberty, and one which is a word, I've said this many times to all of you, a word I hear more among Irish at home and Irish that are here, the word dignity. The word dignity seems to be used by the Irish more than any other word. I may be wrong about that. But you know, it's always a march toward a better future, one of greater liberty, greater dignity, of greater equality and opportunity and possibility for everybody. Possibility for everybody. Our mother used to say, Joey, remember, no one in the world is better than you, but everyone's your equal. Everyone's your equal. She meant it. I used to stutter badly when I was a child. And it's something, if you know anybody who stuttered, it's a very debilitating thing. If I told you that I to talk like that, people will smile. But if I told you I had a club foot when I was a kid that was fixed, no one would laugh about it. And so one of the things that she'd look at me and say, Joey, remember, remember who you are. Like, you're a Biden. Like, hey, what the hell is a Biden? You know what I mean? I'm like I'm a, you know, anyway. And she said, you can do anything. It was just constantly telling me that I could do anything and believed in everything that I could do. And she made me believe. But I find that in most of the families, I know the Irish families, that they just decide that they're not going to be put down by anybody at any time. Even the barriers seem too thick or too strong. And you know, think about the history of your country, whether it's when we faced famine, hardship, division, sorrow, but together we've always prevailed. A lot of pain in between, a lot of loss, but always prevailed. Together we've worked to become more peaceful, more equal, more diverse, more unified, and I think more hopeful. And so today, wherever there's a yearning for freedom, a struggle for change, a cry for justice, people around the world know they can count on Ireland. They can count on Ireland. And I believe they can count on the United States with notable exceptions once in a while. You know, it's not just for hope, but for help, to help them meet their own needs and help them march onward. For the hand of friendship, a common commitment to human dignity. Our countries remember well the cost of war and, most importantly, the profits of peace. And especially as we mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday agreements this week. Above all, we remember the vital and ceaseless work of strengthening democracy to deliver progress for our people everywhere. A good friend is here as well, I think. Gary Hart is here, Senator Hart. Are you here, Gary? Gary, thank you. Gary was part of it. And I just want to say that, you know, I'll end by this. I think we really do stand at an inflection point. I've used that phrase several times in talks I've had here. But the decisions we make now are going to determine what the next 3 or 4 decades are going to look like. They're going to lay down the path that we're going to follow. It's happened every 5, 6 generations throughout history. Things are changing. We have an opportunity to make things better or lay back and let events determine what we're going to do. And folks, tonight, sitting in this beautiful castle where I had the honor to speak to the people of Ireland in 2016, let's resolve to march onward with each other and all those who seek a better future, because the vast majority of us do. So let's renew our commitment to defending all the values we stand for. And let's remember, no barrier is too thick nor too strong for Ireland or the United States of America, especially today. There's nothing, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, there's nothing our nations can't achieve if we do it together. I really mean it. So thank you all. God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done. Thank you.